Welcome to my show simply entitled Women Influencers, where you will find inspirational stories of successful women and men in business. I am Veronica Malolas, CCIM, founder and CEO of the Capstrata Group of Companies, providing commercial real estate development, brokerage, and property management services in the greater Orlando area. Today's guest is John McNellis, author of the third edition of the bestseller Making It in Real Estate, Thriving as a Developer. Certainly an excellent episode to watch. Please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe below. I welcome your comments and please share with someone who can benefit from this podcast. Well, hello, John, all the way from Palo Alto, California. How are you doing today?
Fine, Veronica. Thanks for having me on your show.
No, absolutely. Thank you for being here. I know you're a very, very busy man, and I don't normally interview men on my podcast, but you're special because you do advocate for women in our space, your space of development. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just jump right in and ask you about how you grew up in your environment and how you got to where you are today. So tell us, John.
Sure. I guess you could say I was a Navy brat. My father was in the military, and we moved all around. We ended up in what I like to call the second worst town in California. Sorry, Lancaster. My father was, at that point, he was at Edwards Air Force Base, where they land the space shuttles when weather in Florida isn't good enough. Anyway, unfortunately, my father died when I was young. My mother was a very smart woman, but she was not well educated. But she started selling real estate on the side as an agent, and then seemingly in no time, she had a broker's license. And then she decided to open her own shop. And this was at a time, Veronica, this is late 50s, early 60s, when residential real estate was not like it is today. It was almost exclusively men. And my mother founded an all-female brokerage firm. And she made everybody wear a white blouse and then, black skirts, and they had to look great. And she very quickly became one of the most successful brokers in Antelope Valley, our little town. And she did well enough to put my two sisters and my brother and me through college. And I don't think she ever used the word feminist, but it was kind of, she would come home sometimes and there would be disputes over commissions or who had the right to this client or whatnot. And she would come home crying, saying how, the men had screwed her at the realty board because she was a woman. And so I kind of grew up with that, thinking that women had a place in business. And let's face it, men have always been difficult as far as women are concerned. So anyway, I went to high school in this little town. I went on to Berkeley for my undergrad. I was a journalism major because I loved to write. And then I woke up one day in my senior year and said, oh, crap. I either got to get a job or go to graduate school. And I figured out then, presciently, I guess, in hindsight, that journalism wasn't for me. So I went to law school and, I wanted to be, like with the suspenders. I wanted to be like Perry Mason or something. But, and I went to a good law school and I got a job with a fancy law firm in San Francisco. And I figured out after, oh gosh, a couple of months that it's nothing like the movies. It's not fun. I hated it. And I switched out of the litigation department, and the firm was big enough, into real estate. And so I was a real estate lawyer for a number of years. But I also quickly figured out that being the business guy as opposed to the lawyer was a lot more fun. And I was kind of a half-ass lawyer anyway. I didn't like all that.
So if I may, I know
Sure, jump in.
Yeah, you wrote a book, and it was mentioned as it reminds of the person of Lincoln Lawyer. And now I understand because you used to be an attorney, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, I wrote a novel. People call it my autobiography about this cocky 25-year-old kid who thinks he's a great lawyer and he's actually really bad at it. And then he gets involved in kind of a murder mystery with one of his clients. It's called O'Brien's Law.
So
Uh,
cool.
yeah, so I've always written on the side for fun. But anyway, so I gradually shifted from practicing real estate law to becoming a developer, and it just so much of life is chance. You look at it backwards and it's a straight line, but going forward, there are all kinds of branches and different ways you could go. But
Totally agree. Wow.
I was in my 20s and I teamed up with an older partner and we became shopping center developers. He was already accomplished at it, and I was that cocky, annoying young partner. And so we've been building um, for the last 40 odd years neighborhood shopping centers, a supermarket, drugstore,
Yeah.
bank. That's worked out really well for us. We have a great portfolio.
So let me ask you, how did you shift from the shopping center development group to writing this book that you just launched yesterday?
I was always of two minds, but I love business. Doing deals is a lot of fun. To me, a real estate deal is like a three-dimensional New York Times crossword puzzle. Trying to figure out who the city, the tenants, the contractors, everything else. But I always enjoyed writing, and so I was always writing on the side. And then I joined early in my career the Urban Land Institute, which
Hmm.
I would recommend to any of your listeners who are serious about becoming a commercial real estate professional. I would join the ULI. Uh, and it meets twice a year nationally, and then pretty much every major city has a local chapter or council. Uh, but I started going there and learning more and more. And then I was pretty well known here in Northern California. About 20 years ago, a newspaper editor said, "Hey, we'd like to do an interview with you, John." And I said, I sound a lot smarter on paper than I do in person. So I said, why don't you just submit the questions to me in advance and I'll write, the answers, and you can pretend like it was a verbal Q&A session. And they said, okay. And so I did that and they said, wow, we really like your writing. This was the San Francisco Business Times. Uh, why don't you consider writing for us? So I started writing about, I have been for the last 15 years, writing a column on real estate pretty much every month. And then, about 10 years ago, someone said, wow, John, you could turn this into a book. And so I said, okay. Uh, and I added, I don't know, 15 more chapters, and out came the first edition about 10 years ago of Making It in Real Estate. And it surprisingly became my publisher's #1 best-selling title and kind of a bestseller. Another 5 years went by. We were in the midst of COVID, and there wasn't that much going on other than holding our tenants' hands and forgiving rent and trying to just get everybody to the other side. And
Yeah.
I did a second edition of the book, uh, doubling it in length and answering lots of questions and that had come up in the preceding 5 years. Then another 5 years have gone by. That takes us to today, when I came out with a third edition, adding 34 new chapters, which longer than the original book. And so here is the pitch. It's called Making It Real Estate, third edition. Uh, and it's already, it came out as Amazon's #1 bestseller in real estate. And I'm sure that'll last like 2 days, but it came out very well yesterday when it was published.
Oh, congratulations. That's
Thank,
super amazing. And
thank
that's a
you.
great segue into kind of my next question to you, John. As you recall, I did mention that I hardly interview men on my podcast, but the reason why I was so excited to have you is because you do advocate for women in the development space. And I myself am a developer, and so I want to ask you about influence and how you've worked with women and helped them through their development careers or maybe commercial real estate careers or just your book having an influence and a success. if there was one thing that you're most proud of as far as the impact you've made on women, what would that be?
I wouldn't say it's one thing. I'd say it's kind of like building a pyramid. It's kind of one step at a time, and so back to the ULI, which is a prestige organization. What I have done a number of times is to help women get into ULI, and then once one is a member of ULI, then joining one of the inner councils, they call them, but they're clubs, and they're highly desired to get in. And so I've helped women come on to my development council uh, in in the ULI, and I've tried to help them, with their careers. One, in fact, through my recommendation, I got her a job in Southern California. In my experience, over 40 years, I've only met one true female developer. Her name is Leah Alperin. And so hats off, Leah, if you listen to this. She's in Southern California. She read my book about 10 years ago, wrote me on LinkedIn and said, "Dear John, I have a lot here in Laguna Beach, along the coast, but it's kind of expensive. And I'm thinking maybe I should uh, sell that and then develop in Colorado." And that was how the conversation started. And I said, they're not inventing, back to that Superman movie, they're not inventing any more beachfront properties. So I
Yeah.
said, to stick with the coast. And we became friends, and back and forth, I would help her. But she, Veronica, is truly the only woman that I've met who uses, and she inherited a little bit of money, who uses her own money, buys a lot, builds a house, and sells it. Uh, and in fact, she's so unique in my experience that I jokingly call her unicorn. And
Mm.
so when she writes me, she says, "Yeah, how about this? You're a unicorn." I wish there were more women in development, but and I've thought about that because I knew we were going to talk today. And partially, development is really hard. Uh,
Yeah.
and I looked this up. I asked Chat, the Wizard of Oz of our times.
Yes.
I said, "Hey, Chat, what percentage of developers fail?" And what would you guess? But before I tell you what Chat says,
Uh, how many developers generally, not just women, but
yeah,
just everybody?
all together, yeah, men,
Yeah,
women.
probably, I don't know, 50-50.
It's worse than that. Chad says over a 10-year period, 65% of development companies fail.
Yeah.
And in my experience, it's even worse than that. Maybe 10 to 15% really succeed, and
Mm.
others, they kind of muddle along. So it's a very hard business, and there's a lot
Yes.
of risk involved. And I think men may be just a little bit dumber than women, uh, or they don't really think about all the risks that are involved. The guys who fail, because it's a tough business, and so it's like, why do boys die at a much greater rate than girls? Because they do stupid stuff, right? They'll jump off a bridge, into shallow water, or they'll try to run across a railroad track when a train's coming. Stuff that no girl would ever do. And
Yeah.
so I think everybody knows that it's a really tough business, and there are a lot of guys, that they're full of testosterone, and they think, "Oh yeah, I can do this." If McNellis can do it, how hard can it be? Which is a good point. But
Yeah.
so I think women are a little bit more thoughtful, a little more pragmatic, and they just don't go in for that risk. I could be wrong, but that's kind of my thought on it, and I wish there were more women involved.
John, for our audience today, especially the women who are listening in, who wants to jump into development, what is one piece of advice that you could give to them?
I would say start small. My best advice, and when people come in to see me, I say, find the best neighborhood that you can afford. Find the worst house in that neighborhood. Worst house, best neighborhood. Let's say that the neighborhood sells for average 500,000 a house. Find one that's selling for 300,000 because somebody died or somebody moved away,
Yeah.
or somebody inherited it. And if you can buy that house for 300,000 and put 50,000 or 100,000 in, you're set. What I like about housing is there's almost a zero vacancy rate. In my world, in retail, in office, everywhere else, there's a good chance that you build something, they won't come. That there's a good chance you'll have vacancy. But as a training wheels deal, buying a broken down house and fixing it up is perfect because Veronica has all of the attributes or all of the requirements of a much bigger deal. I mean, you've got to negotiate the purchase price. You work with a title company. You've got to get a lender. You probably need a contractor. Uh, all the stuff that I do on a much bigger scale, it's just more details, more zeros, but it's the same thing: buying, fixing up, selling. And I think it's the most forgiving. Now you can get caught. What drives me crazy are all these idiots on TV. The $1 million flip guys. They make it sound so simple. It's not. And you can lose money that way, but I think it's a safer approach. And particularly for those clever women who are listening, who are worried about risk, I think it's the way to go.
So, John, it's really great that you're talking about risk management, because I think at the end of the day, if you're a good steward, whether you be male or female, if you're a good steward of what your treasures are right now, right, and you're managing your risk, I think your outcomes will be so much better. So I appreciate that so much. John, I think we've come to the part of our interview where you get to ask me a question. So please go ahead.
Well, sure. Just back to the prior theme here, the relative rarity of female developers, Veronica. How did you get into the development business? And explain exactly your role. Are you the principal? Are you the one making the deals?
Yes, so I'm the lead master developer, as a matter of
Wow.
fact. And yeah, and that's a great question, because we went into it. When I say we, what I think the most important part of what we did successfully is that we put together a great team. And I will go back to the whole advocacy, right? Because there are, it could be a very closed space in development where you have to have a big network. And what I did originally was really seek mentors. And so I actually have two very prominent mixed use developers that I asked to help me go through kind of the application process to submit a bid for an RFQ, which is I should know, and for the audience, it's a request for qualification. RFP would be a request for proposal, and so we built this amazing team. And because I was the one that had the local relationships, and the team really wanted a leader in the bid process. So I'm the lead master developer, and we partnered with a multifamily developer, and then we have an expanded team that was well known locally. And so we beat out like 5 or 7 applications, and we're actually in the process of doing that right now. So the question would really be best answered by saying, number one, I walked in it boldly, saying, if they can do it, I can do it too. And number
Right.
two, I sought the
Good for
right
you.
mentors and the right people on my team that would help support me from start to finish, and reputable people who I trust and who has faith in my abilities to carry the torch, so to speak. So I hope that was at least something that our audience can take away and say, yeah, if they can do it, I can do it too. I hope that that's the mindset that everybody gets from just the answer to your question, and I appreciate that so much. So, John, congratulations on your bestseller. And
Wait, here, let's put this back up for your audience.
yes, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm buying that book for sure.
Yo, you should.
Yes, and John, if the audience wanted to buy that, could you tell us a little bit about where we could find you or connect with you, and also where they can get their hands on that book?
Sure, they can buy it on Amazon. They can buy it, if they wish, on my literary website, which is John McNellis, McNellis.com. They can become my buddy on LinkedIn, John McNellis, just like Aaliyah Alperin did. And if they're nice and they send me a question, maybe I can answer it and try to help them out. Or you can write me at johnmcnellis.com. Again, I write a monthly column for the San Francisco Business Times. And it's free. I repost it to all my readers. Anyway, and
That's great.
I love real estate. And ladies and any gentlemen listening, I'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And I want to connect with you, John, because I think I could learn a lot from you, and I'm definitely buying that book, your book.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
thank you again for spending the time with me and our audience today, and I appreciate you so much. And I look forward to connecting again in the future.
Thank you, Veronica. My pleasure.